I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to Conversations with Al McFarlane. Today is Wednesday, June 15th, 2022. Happy birthday to my brother Raymond McFarlane. Ray is Ray after me. I'm one of 12. I'm number two. Ray is number three. And happy birthday, Raymond. Doing well, kicking it still, and just a prince of a guy he always has been. So sending best wishes and love to my brother. Brenda, how you doing? Good to see you.
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I'm looking for a couple of people to join the program today. And until they do, I want to just take one more time to, as we did, I think yesterday, reflect on the work that we're doing together. We are interviewing people 5 days a week from around the city and around the country, even around the world. In fact, I want to share with you that I had a great amount of pleasure this Saturday in connecting with a group of Yoruba people in Lagos, Nigeria.
Oh, wow.
And they were in connection with a group of Yoruba in Bahia, uh, in Brazil. And they have an association of people, the descendants of the slave trade, who were brought from Brazil to Yoruba, from Lagos, Nigeria, to Brazil, and either through escape, or they called it Cimarron or marriage, or through after slavery was ended, some of them found their way back to Nigeria and to Lagos. So there's a settlement and a community of people who are in Lagos who are the descendants of those who had been in Brazil and who returned to Lagos. So that link is there, it's vital, and they are studying their experience, capturing their experience, and wanting to affirm and validate the resiliency of their experience. And I think it's wonderful that they have created a formal alliance and relationship. I had the opportunity to join by connecting with a friend, Yoji Senna. Yoji
I was
Senna.
getting ready to say, remember him when you interviewed him.
Yeah, in fact,
Yeah,
I'm going to send him a note right now because maybe he can join the program.
he had to run that day, but he was really happy to see you and talk about what he was doing and that he wanted to leave the United States. So
He's
now he's
gone. No, he's gone.
living.
He was
Yeah,
actually on from Brazil. Uh, I'll send him a note saying, "Can
that
you
he's
join the
living in a fisherman's
village?"
community. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And but it was great to be connected with him and to through
sure.
him talk to uh, in this case English speaking Nigerians, Yoruba people who lived in Bahia, and also to have a direct connection
Let me
and
see where
conversation
that
with
is.
people who lived in Lagos. So that was really cool. So here's where I'm going with that. I have this relationship also. I think you were on a conversation I did with Dr. Caesar Attuhiri. He is in Ghana and is a philosopher who teaches at University of Ghana at Legon.
I
He
wrote the
lived for,
articles on his piece.
yeah, we ran a serialized article
Yep,
on statues that he
yep.
had published, that we got the rights to republish in Inside News. A great
That
discussion
was
on
great. That
the, it was based on the phenomenon of of Americans, not just Black Americans, tearing down the Confederate statues in the South and other places. So he went and did a study on this whole history of statues in communities and cultures, and how people, depending on the shifting in the political environment and in the cultural understanding, will reject what statues represent and either take them down, put them in museums, or take them down and dump them in the river. So he kind of gave
was
a
great.
detailed recollection of that kind of activity. So we've got him that we want to stay in contact with in Ghana. I was on the phone this morning with family members in London, and we want to restore and broaden that relationship so that, were you on board when I had my conversation with about a half a dozen of my family members
I
from,
wrote the article.
from London? Yeah, from London and from, they were in London, in Arizona, I think, California, and in Kingston, Jamaica. It was a great conversation. So our idea, though, is to just keep bringing us together in different places and different configurations. And I think it's a valuable idea. It's a practical idea because the technology allows us to communicate. I'm going to bring a new friend on that you haven't met yet, Brenda, but I want to introduce him because he's going to be working with us in the future. And that's Vash Bodhi. How do you pronounce that, Vash?
It's actually Vash Bodhi.
Vash Bodhi. Good morning, good afternoon. How you doing, man?
I'm doing all right. Hi, Miss Brenda. How you doing?
I'm fine. Beautiful smile. Look at you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
A beautiful spirit. This is a guy that's got a lot going on, and I connected with him because he works like I do with the Black Press of America, Black Press USA, and produces a show there on a regular basis called He Said, She Shed, right? So,
she sells by the seashore.
There we go. So I wanted you to come on and talk about your show and just kick it with me and Brenda, just about what our capacity to communicate means for us individually, but also for our communities and for the culture that we are part of, and for the vision we have for advancing our families and community and advancing humanity. And so, Vash, great to see you.
It's great to be seen. So
well, take a minute and introduce yourself to my viewers and listeners here on Conversations with Al McFarlane.
Well, I am Vash Bodhi. I am, as Al said, a producer on and co-host on He Said, He Said, He Said, which is the first show of its kind for the National Newspaper Publishers Association. We are LGBTQI centric, although our program really covers all aspects of humanity, just told and looked at from our particular seasoned Black man's perspective. We are on Friday nights at 7 o'clock on the NNPA network, as well as on our own network, which is He Said, He Said, He Said. And I'm going to put into the private chat a way that people can find us at He Said, He Said, He Said. Mm-hmm. And you can share that with them. They can just go to our link tree. But I am also the newly elected board chair of IMRU Media. Now, IMRU Media is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. One of our main goals is to advance the equality for all LGBTQI people through the development of media, all types, preservation of media. And we oversee IMRU Radio, which is the nation's longest running LGBTQI radio news magazine. It's been in production since 1974. And one of our big main focuses is to digitize the archives from all of those programs, because as we people of color understand, the journey to equality is long, and the processes and tactics that people use to keep us from full equality just keep repeating themselves. So the best way to advance the journey is to show people what has gone on in the past, show how it is trying to repeat itself, and sort of eradicate that and build tribe. And that's what we are doing.
How do we center development and advancement in the African American community, the Black community around GLBTQIA? Is that correct? Around that, how do we, number one, not be victim to our historic, and maybe I'm overstating the case, xenophobia? Mm-hmm. That's how do we move? I think we're moving beyond that, but I'm asking you, how do we? With intention, celebrate all of the gifts and all of the understandings and all of the possibilities we bring to each other as human beings. What do you think?
So many levels to that. First thing we have to do is understand how connected we are. Mm-hmm. The main modern civil rights movements that we know and understand, I think the more people understand that those were driven by LGBTQI people. Bayard Rustin was the architect of the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. That became, the pillar of the civil rights movement. He also was the architect of the March on Selma. There was a lesbian woman who came up with Black Lives Matter. So just in our lifetimes, understanding that the big pushes for Black civil rights have come from within the LGBTQI community is one thing. Another thing that needs to happen is we need to understand that since the beginning of humanity, there have always been gay people. There has always been transgender people. A third thing is we need to stop equating sex and gender. Sex deals with body parts. Gender is how you show up in the world. So as we start to unpack some of these sort of preconceived notions that we have about what things are, the better we can sort of start looking at really what they are and how they overlay. I can go on and on, but we can start with those and I can bring some more in if we need to.
That's a great beginning. Before I bring in my guest, Representative Mahmoud Noor, in, talk about your programs and invite people to show up, engage, and support, and how can we link up so that we are constantly promoting audience to your programs.
You're speaking to me,
yes,
correct?
Yes.
He said really is just a hoot. We have a great time on that show. It's every Friday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can either look at it on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. Just tune in. If you go to the link tree that we put up, you can see clips of the show. We always post clips. The topics that we have range everywhere from mental health. We bring musical guests on. We just recently had Cy Smith on. I'm not sure if you all know Cy Smith, but Cy Smith is a dynamo vocalist. She's the kind of vocalist that everyone who is a big vocalist says that she's their favorite vocalist. I mean, you see her everywhere. She does background for people. She has her own albums out. We do mental health. We're about to do an episode this Friday where we're just talking about the news and the things that are going on in the news and how we filter them. We play games with folks. It's just, we always have a really good time. For the other programs, you can go to linktree.imru media and we can link you through to the other programs that we do. When you reached out, I was actually editing a piece that I'm doing about the intersex community. So, reach out, or you can just get in contact with me at linktree/Vosh Bodie. I mean, just reach out to me directly and I can just hook you up with everything you may need to know.
Well, I'm looking forward to you working with me. I value and treasure what I'm understanding is your expansive history and capabilities in media and in marketing. So we've invited you to look at supporting this work and helping us grow the audience and also the professionalism of what we're doing here. So, Vosh, I'm just excited that.
I'm going to hook you up. You have no idea. I just can't wait to get started.
There we go. Let me hang out and let me introduce you to Representative Mahmoud Noor. Brother, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much, Al, for having me, and great discussion with Vash Bodhi, and I enjoyed the conversation and how we can become more inclusive society. So I'm grateful to be with you all.
And let me introduce you to Brenda Lyle Gray. Brenda is with me every day, 5 days a week. Brenda and I were in kindergarten together. We're both in our mid-70s now. And so we've got a history that we celebrate and we have fun just looking at how the world has changed in the past 70 years, I guess, 74 or 5 years from our coming into it to where we are now. And that's exciting to have in this conversation, Representative, because we believe that the things we do and say right now are intentional and have consequence and meaning for the futures that we want to create. How do we act in a way that celebrates, elevates our thoughts and our decisions, our actions, so that they reflect our commitment to building the best of humanity. Let me go to you, though, and ask you to talk about what happened or didn't happen in the legislative session that just ended. Minnesota sitting on $9 billion in surplus. And for many, there are people that are upset that the legislature could not succeed in investing in things that need change, need addressing, so that money is sitting there. For many, however, there's a sense that the Republican resistance to spending is intentional, willful, and they want to blame the Democratic administration for its inability to enact the programs, to use the money to serve the purposes they have said they want to, but they also want to have the money to use because they believe they're going to win in November, and they want to have that war chest to spend as they wish to, primarily giving it back without attention to the social programs that we believe are important. But why don't you give your take on that?
Well, thank you, first of all, for raising the issue of the unfinished business at the Capitol. Quite frankly, the session never ended because we never did the people's work. We were sent there to deliberate and bring forward a comprehensive process whereby we're investing in the state of Minnesota. I know you mentioned, tax cuts. Yes, we had a significant tax breaks and credits for over $4 billion. That was negotiated by leadership, agreed to, and ready to be passed. Yet we didn't see that come to fruition because of the other issues that were never resolved. We have billions of needs, and I know you talked about the structural surplus that we have in the state of Minnesota. And yes, we have even more than the $9 billion. The key question that I have is, if people are not willing to legislate, then why run for office? We need to be negotiating based on what the needs are. We can't be talking about one group or the other. We are all Minnesotans. The needs that we have in the metro area, the same needs that we have in greater Minnesota, are the same needs for our kids. So an investment of $1 billion in our kids' education is a significant investment that is needed. A significant investment of $1 billion in the health and human services, that's an investment that is needed. $500 million in public safety, that includes community initiatives. It's something that is needed now, not tomorrow. We see a lot of opportunity youth who are looking for opportunity, and the resource will have served us well to address some of the challenges that we have. The housing crisis that we have, people not being able to afford their food, the inflation, everything else. Families are struggling, and we have wealth to spend to reduce the burden on our communities, and yet our colleagues in the Senate are not ready to finish the business that we started. Yes, there's a few things we'll be talking about, but that's in essence. I think the governor has been recommending. There was a $4 billion to be spent, $4 billion in tax provisions, and $4 billion bottom line in terms of the $12 billion that we have. Yes, we made some minor moves, but we never, ever came to the conclusion on something that we all agreed needs to be done.
You did have some movement on supporting people that we call frontline workers who were impacted by having to work during the pandemic. Talk about that. That was a success, I think, maybe one of the few great successes.
Grateful to have been in the conversation in the room to fight for the frontline workers. When we define frontline workers, it includes a lot of people, whether you are in a grocery, working as a grocery clerk, or whether you are janitorial, cleaning up the floors, whether you are doing a house, residential maintenance, whether you are in a healthcare setting. That was more comprehensive and inclusive. We were successful, the House Democrats, in negotiating up to $500 million to be divvied up on the applicants. The application is open and ready to go. As of yesterday afternoon, I think there was more than 550,000 applicants. Our hope is there'll be around 700,000 or more. And then for those who are eligible, that $500 million will be divided equally. And let me put it this way. If you worked 120 hours between March 15, 2020 and June 30th, 2021, and you worked under some of the categories that I just described, please go to Frontline Pay on the Department of DLI's website and apply today. Don't wait for the last day, which is July 22nd. And the income for an individual is 85,000 for an individual if they're filing separately, but for a family, it's 185,000. Mm-hmm. If you worked in healthcare setting in a direct contact with individuals who may have had COVID-19, so with that direct proximity, the income limit is 350,000 for household filing taxes together. For individual filing taxes under that same category, it's $175,000. What I mean by that is the high rate of income that was being more intentional, being more inclusive, to really say thank you, because this is just a more of a thank you for the work that they did. It's also thank you to the President Biden's initiative, which was called the Premium Pay, that helped us and guide us into this conversation. And so we took care of those who took care of us during the pandemic. And this is something which I want to make sure that all our communities, regardless of where you live in the state of Minnesota, if you worked in any of those categories that are described on the website, please apply today. You may end up getting up to 750 or more, depending on the number of eligible applicants that we have.
Should I be calling somebody, representative, to invite the state to run ads in my newspaper so that they can get that message out to our community? And the reason I ask that is that too often, though we are doing that frontline work, we're not as aware or as plugged in, or we believe that solutions that are presented are for them, whoever them is, and not for us. And so there is a tendency to even self-exclude where we ought to be at the center. What do you think about that, and what should we be doing?
Absolutely. And quite frankly, Commissioner for the DLI, Commissioner Robertson, who is part of the community, so she can give a good information on how to go about. She's the commissioner for the Department of Labor and Industry. Department of Labor and Industry is in charge of the frontline worker pay. So what I'll tell you this as I speak to you is we will definitely, I'll reach out to the commissioner, but I'm asking you to also reach out and say, how can we get this message out? Because the time is of essence. July 22nd is coming out. More than 550,000 people have applied. And I will sense that many of our community members have not yet applied because if you're in social services, if you're in industries that were considered to be on the front line and you were exempt and you didn't stay at home, as long as you worked 120 hours under that criteria, you are eligible to receive the frontline pay.
Jump in, Vash and Brenda. I want to say that Representative Noor and I both were on the board of the Confederation of Somalis in Minnesota. That's how we met. His organization was a major advocacy organization for an emerging population of Somali and Horn of Africa residents, a great and effective organization. Representative, talk about the community, if you would. I tell you that I believe that the Somali presence has enhanced the quality of life for all Africans, African Americans here. But what is your thought? What is your sense of how the community feels about itself and its successes in moving into the electoral process and to business and more?
So, Brother Al and I go way back in 2000s when the initial arrivals of new immigrants from the African continent, mostly Somalis, Oromo community, the dialogue of invitation. I think I just wanted to say publicly here today, we really appreciate your leadership, your welcoming, your engagement to learn from one another. To make sure that new immigrants who are from the continent are welcomed in the state of Minnesota. And many people may not know this, but you invested a lot of time to make sure that you connect and you bring the vibrance, the cultural issues, and we had lots of discussion. In fact, one of the highlights, when people started settling down and we're now in third generation, some of the music that we shared, the music by Fadumo and all those things the vibrance that you shared in terms of how can we all learn from one another and be more successful, whether it's in the political arena, which we didn't have then, whether it's the economic, opportunities that we're looking for, and how to close the gap so that we're not left out. That was significant. Many people may not know that, but it's who you know in terms of receiving you and welcoming you that helps us transition into the next level. Hence, I think because of the pathways that were open to us by our predecessors, communities who came before us, we were able to stand on our own. We were able to engage the communities. Yet we haven't been really 100% successful because there's nothing called 100%. We made a significant progress. Today, we have the individuals who are serving in different levels of the government, from the federal to the state to the local government. That's just a small step. But the question that comes back to me is, how much is needed? When you look at home ownership, our communities are struggling at the bottom in the state. When it comes to education, similar process, because there is no disaggregated data that differentiate a foreign-born African student and a native-born African American, and yet the significance of that needs to be continually discussed. So I think we have more work to do in sense of bringing and bridging the gaps that we see in our communities. My kid who was born here is through and through African American. He's raised in the community. So I think that cultural inclusion and also making sure that individuals retain their culture. We know this is a place where many communities come and assimilate in the process. Yes, there will be some, but we also need to be able to make sure people integrate their cultures so we can continue to share what we brought here as a value.
Tell your own story. Great story, because this is your second office. I believe you were on the school board for the city of Minneapolis, and you've been a candidate before. What I know about you is a story of persistence. You don't quit. You don't stop. You keep going, and you win as a result of that. But talk about your own personal path coming here as a child, what your family was like at home in Somalia, and that transition that you personally experienced, witnessed.
Well, the struggles are real. When you come from a civil war country whereby you are evicted from your home, you leave your place, and coming to Kenya as a child and living there as my home, and then moving directly to Minneapolis, Minnesota, that's a significant change. Many people, as we see in the war in Ukraine, you can feel it. The trauma of young kids and families, what they go through, the feeling is there. We feel them, we see them, and you can equate to what many of us have gone through, coming through that process and not knowing how to even speak English. You come and learn in the process of a new language. You struggle to make your ends meet. I worked, initially introduced to the politics through the neighborhood. Initially in my neighborhood, they came and door knocked and said, "Hey, you look, you can come and learn with us and be partner in this work of helping each other." So that neighborhood organizations opened the pathway for me to engage. And hence, it actually pulled me into working for the Confederation of Somali Community as a volunteer, because the learnings that I took, the other individuals who are arriving needed help. I continue to do that, knowing that I can give my time and energy as a young person who felt now that I need to expand. When you come to a place, you're expecting a silver plate, nothing like that. You have to work hard and to be able to succeed. I looked for many jobs. I went to, started with $7 an hour when I started working in a factory, trying to do a little bit of work and some income. And then my dedication, my dad, who just recently passed away, told me two things. You can either build your own income by working many jobs, or you can learn and go to college. I went to MCTC, and my focus was to become a computer scientist. Of course, that took me the trajectory of becoming, graduating from Metro State University with computer science degree. I worked for the state of Minnesota, which was one of my last jobs as assistant management. That shows, going to 3 jobs, trying to pay my education, which I still have my student debt. Those are struggles which are real in life. And quite frankly, that connection to that neighborhood and bringing me to the community attracted me to what is needed. Working in the neighborhood and then working for Hennepin County in my transition in that process in social services. I got recruited to serve on the Council of African American as the first East African member to become advisor to the governor. Then it was Governor Ventura, who pulled me into the process with his team to be advisor to the governor and legislature. So from that learning, you get pushed into that there are things that we can fix through policy. Working for the county, working for the state, connecting to the neighborhood in the community, you feel the need. And my starting point at that point was, yes, I have kids now. Where do I start from? My wife being a teacher, I said, I need to go start working for the kids. I didn't succeed in my initial process, but when our brother Hussein Samata passed away, I continued to fulfill the need in the school board. And yet that wasn't enough for me because I felt there's a need to fix at the state level. When we had a chance in the Senate, which we lost by at least 300 votes running for the Senate, and that showed there's a need. Many people showed up. I was the second person. In fact, there were many candidates who I'm not going to be naming the whole list here. But that was one of my successful runs to be in a Senate position. But I never gave up. I ran for the House, which I lost. And at that point, Ilhan Omar was part of my campaign in helping. And I think people remember the discussions in media and many places, the struggles that we had to go through in that process. It's real. Those things that have been happening in terms of trying to give the pathway. To make the story short, which maybe I should be writing a book about this, I actually, when the transition was happening, in fact, I ran with Ilhan and then Representative Phyllis Khan. Ilhan won the race on the second round of trying. I never gave up. The transition with AG, Keith Ellison moving to run for AG and Ilhan moving to run for Congress opened the pathway. I had 2 hours to make the decision. Should I run or should I quit? I said, I'm not a quitter. I keep on running. And so I signed up once more. And I think that was the starting point. I'm now serving my, going to my 3rd term. Appreciative that I'm running unopposed twice, which doesn't happen in politics. It shows the level of work. I'm now the chair for workforce and business development in the state of Minnesota. When we had the struggles during the pandemic, working to address the unemployment issues, working to address the economic need, I was at the table. Something that I feel I'm honored and privileged because many people don't have those opportunities. So I keep on being reminded that there are people who are in need, that we need to keep on serving. So I see myself as a somebody who's willing to serve the needs of others. And we continue to do that, and we'll keep on doing that.
Let me thank you for your leadership and support of ethnic media when the COVID-19 pandemic was unfolding in this state. We assembled ourselves to appeal to the Minnesota Department of Health and to the governor's executive council that they should depart from history and be innovative and proactive in reaching our communities in media and in platforms that we own and that serve us as defined by us. And that appeal, that request came against an environment that was patronizing, paternalistic, and chauvinistic. I can say that from our point of view, the history is that white leaders felt they didn't have to pay attention to Black and brown and ethnic communities. And we pushed, and you were among those leaders at the Capitol that heard us and pushed the state to engage us in a way that was robust and significant. So thank you for that. Where do we stand right now? Because our communities have been more impacted by COVID-19. And as the idea of a solution and reduction of impact lies ahead, that's not particularly true in our communities? How do we make sure that we don't get lost and therefore hurt by the general backing away of interest and energy and resources to prevent and resolve the COVID crisis?
Well, you raise a great question. I just wanted to note that the efforts that you undertook under your leadership by bringing all the ethnic media under one umbrella and fighting collectively really saved lives. Many people may not realize this, but your efforts led to having multilingual, multicultural, multi-ethnic groups to come together and get the message out. So they had all the knowledge. They knew how to do it. They were successful in doing it. And you also continue to advocate for that collectiveness. We want to say thank you. And I think I want to thank my colleagues who, Chair Moran, we had Senator Bobby Joe Champion, we had Senator Kunish Kodin, we had Senator Fong, we had also our former colleague, Jeff Hayden, who was a champion. So all those who were sitting at the table and saying, we got to do different because the status quo doesn't work for our communities. Mm-hmm. When major medias usually get the largest share, this is an investment that we're doing. And if we don't value those communities who can get from the direct source of trusted source in their communities, then we're doing a disservice. As we talk about even the frontline workers, we need trusted sources to inform and engage. And to be able to achieve those goals, you need to be bringing the message directly to them. And I think this type of avenue and the work that you do needs to continue. We do have the AMPAS program for the radio process. We need to continue to put more investment. We have the resources to reshape how we do that work. And I think we collectively, we have a duty to continue to do what is necessary and not to give up. Sometimes we tend to give up at one point or the other. Once you give up, then you have failed. And as you noted, that persistency and consistency is part of my nature. So I think we need to keep on coming back every now and then. Incremental changes that we see are necessary, but we also need to be finding the long-term solutions.
Vash, jump in. Any questions, comments, thoughts, feelings, observations? Vash Bodhi?
No, this is actually really quite interesting to hear a migrant story that has ended up in success and leadership. It's good to know you. What do you find? I'm wondering, what are you finding is one of your greatest challenges with getting this last round of sort of bills or things passed to deal with this amount of money that you guys have in the surplus?
I think it's lack of political will, and many people feeling that they should not do anything because they will come and take it all and use it on their own priorities. So this is not a common sense process. Nobody has got the silver, look that they can see something into the future. But if we're thinking about the future, the struggles are real. We see the inflation, we see the high gas prices. This is painful to many families. And I think my colleagues on the Senate Republicans need to come back to the table. In fact, we negotiated $3.5 billion, part of the package that we had, that $500 million for the frontline workers. We put $2.743 billion into addressing the unemployment trust fund deficit, the debt that we took from the federal government. We spent $15 billion to help people with unemployment in the state of Minnesota. $10 billion from the federal government, $5 billion from the state. We had a debt. We took that as an obligation as a state. We never, ever walked away. We did it. So that means we're committed from the House Democrats because we are in the majority. And we're asking the majority, which is led by the Republican Senate. There is no excuse for not accomplishing what is at the table. In fact, my bill, which I had a $300 million, it ended up becoming a smaller amount, less than even $25 million. We signed. My counterpart in the Senate signed. The commissioner signed. We agreed to pass that bill. However, during the last hour, the Senate tabled the bill that they should be sending to us so we can quickly approve it. So that, to me, I don't understand. In fact, there's more than $230 million that should be going to small businesses based on a credit that they can get it from the unemployment. When we made the decision to replenish, we said anybody who paid more should get a credit refund through the State Department of Economic Development. Yet that funding is sitting, waiting for a fix because we could not do it during this session time. Now the session has come to an end. I believe this is a disservice to the state of Minnesota and to the people of Minnesota. And we need people to understand it's not the House holding back or the governor. They're all committed. It's up to the Senate Republicans to come to the table.
Do you think there's going to be a special session? Will the governor attempt to call it? And if he does, will it and can it be productive?
So from my perspective, there was a leadership agreement of how we solved the deadlock that we had at the beginning. The $4 billion to be spent, and then also $4 billion in the tax credit in the tax bill, and $4 billion at the bottom line. I believe there's a need. We see the challenges, and the Senate Republicans, I think the notion that we can have a special session before the deadline for filing that has happened. And now I'm hearing that individuals want to wait until after the primary, which is August 9th. So there's no need to wait. I think the need is right now visible. It needs a fix, and we need to fix it sooner than later.
Okay, Brenda, any questions or comments? Any thoughts?
I'm just taken back. I don't understand it. But then it's been a tough week to understand what's going on. Al knows that I have just been upset for the past couple days when this Republican, Lauren Boebert, just outright said, she was speaking to a church group and said, I want Biden dead, and I want his days to be numbered. And I went, huh? And she's still in office.
These people are in a major, major deflection and distraction tactic right now because of these hearings that are going on.
Oh, I know.
There's so much that is about to be uncovered and revealed in terms of their behavior leading up to that insurrection. So anything they can do to get their base to not pay attention, or to get the people that are covering those hearings to talk about something different, they are going to try. So, it is a circus act, and I would just let it go.
It hurts, though. That man over in Saudi Arabia doesn't want to be there. Mm-hmm. They have enough oil in this country where those prices could come down.
Certainly.
He has to speak to the Crown Prince. He knows the Crown Prince is responsible for the reporter's mutilation.
Sure.
But he's doing what he can do for the country. This man's given almost 60 years of his life to this country.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's fine.
Former educator, worried about the kids, almost 40 years in education at all levels. I have been writing about this, with Insight for the past 2 years. And for some reason, the audacity of this woman has just really hurt, So I'll be fine. I'm grown. We're both 75. He's almost 75. I turned in March. But
we appreciate your wisdom, in terms of giving us that perspective. But there's also more, which I think we can do better. When we talk about the capital investment funds that was negotiated and agreed to, $1.4 billion investment in the state of Minnesota, including $150 million that was cash appropriation to help in building that equity in that system, so that our communities can have a fair share in that process. That was left undone. One of the things that many people may be looking at different things. This is using our full faith and credit to do the capital investment. And then $150 more million that was supposed to be spent was agreed to. And then on top of that, we have almost $7 billion from the federal government that requires matching money for the state to spend on infrastructure. That is not going to happen because there's a need for us to be committed to that, because we may not end up getting federal funding because the state isn't willing to pay a very small portion of it, which was included in the bills that we have ready to go. It's not that we're not ready with those issues. It's not a discussion. It's just a closure that needs to happen, and it's not happening quicker than we want to.
So how do you connect what's happening nationally, even internationally? I mean, these things are not disconnected. They are part of a trend and part of, I think, the apparent death knell being heard for the ultra-conservative right globally. And I think that as that position moves towards atrophy, it becomes more dangerous and becomes more polarizing. And what we agree is progressive, liberal politics seem to be in disarray, but that might not be really the case. How do you align what's happening on the national level and what our challenges are internationally with what happens on the street right in South Minneapolis and at the legislature over in St. Paul?
I think there was a reporter who stated that the world is flat. We are more interconnected. What happens in Saudi Arabia or Ukraine or any other place in the world, in Russia, in other places, really has got a direct impact on our pockets, on our lives. Mm-hmm. And that also really impacts the politics of blaming someone else for something that someone doesn't have full control. We understand the federal government doesn't have a control on the production of oil. It doesn't do the supply of that oil. Yes, we can use our reserve and everything else, but that's having a huge impact. But that's not the whole story. When you look at corporations, which are global corporations, by the way, who actually take a lot of profits. They've made a lot of profits, and yet we're complaining about inflation. If there's an inflation, then there should be a reduction in their profit, because that is added up into what we pay for. Whether you're paying for a loaf of bread or you're buying milk, it should not cost us that amount. Yes, there's some challenges with workforce shortages. Yes, we are having some significant issues, even to that workforce shortages. If we cannot bring in new people, especially immigrants who are qualified to take some of these jobs, we're not going to close the multi-million workforce shortage that we have. Not today, not tomorrow. There has to be other avenues because many people have given up on employment. Minnesota is one of the highest. We are almost at 70%. We're going back to that 70%, but yet there's more than 205,000 jobs. And there's less than 100,000 people looking for jobs. So that means we have got gaps in all over the place when it comes to healthcare, when it comes to education, when it comes to our economy. And yet, what happens on our street is lack of investment. People are not willing to take the resource that we have right now, it's sitting on the plate, and say, let's address the need that we see on our streets. Whether it's north side or south side in Minneapolis, we understand there's a housing crisis. Many corporations have taken advantage of and swapped everything that none of us can now afford to buy any homes in our neighborhood. So this is now more of a greed issue. And that somehow we need to cap that issue to be able to address. We don't even have a price gouging in the state of Minnesota. We have tried a couple of times. We have not been able to succeed because our colleagues on the other side don't believe that there's a need to address those issues. So from my perspective, I think global issues impact local issues. And because of the conservative are moving on the extreme side, that they feel uncomfortable, that they will be challenged in their seats. And some of them are being challenged, quite frankly, by folks on the extreme side who are telling them, hold the line, don't do anything and give it back. Yes, in what way or fashion? Do we leave people who are in the metro out? Do we leave people who live in Minneapolis? And, all those issues are at the table. And I think we need to be considering what happens globally will always have impact on what happens locally. And all politics is local, by the way.
Finally, Representative, how do we prevent or ensure cooperation, shared values and interests between the native-born African community and the newly arrived African community. There is a discussion here and around the country framed by the notion of ADOS, the African descendants of slavery. And there appears to be an effort to create a distinction, but the distinction, in my view, is probably not real and may not serve because the problem that has to be addressed is an international problem, a multinational problem, and that is what the slave trade was. How do we avoid the trap of being pitted against each other, blacks against blacks, blacks against Latinos and Asians? How do we rather instead determine that we can be planful, intentional, and productive for all of our communities if we don't fall for the okie doke? What do you think?
I think the struggles, the historical struggles for African Americans are real. Individuals who are uprooted from their home and brought here. That's a real challenge that I think in America we need to be able to accept that as a historical perspective, and also to provide that reparation in terms of the harm that was done to many communities. And I think that is something which has never been done. There's never been a significant acknowledgement within our system. Likewise, when we declared racism as a public health crisis in the state of Minnesota, in the House of Representatives, that was one of the first places that we were able to highlight some of those significant disinvestments, some of those disinvestments that we have seen in many places, including the redlining and so many other things. So we came here knowing that those challenges existed. We came here to partner with our brothers and sisters and fight for the justice, and making sure that we don't forget, we never ever forget the struggles that our brothers have gone through. In fact, that should be one of the criteria of collaboration, the criteria for us to support one another, to come together as a unified voice and to voice our concern in terms of saying me against you. It doesn't help anyone. We are all in this boat together, but we may have come in a different settings. But what we need to do is to build those bridges and to become the best people that we can be collectively to address those issues that are actually creeping and becoming more of an inhibitor to all of us. And I keep on telling folks that my sons who were born and raised here are going to be the same as any other African American. They may not be able even to speak into the future their own native language. So they've adapted their home, they've become part and parcel, but then we also need them to understand the history. They have got that historical perspective. And I think you and I, we have made some initial steps at the beginning in 2000s when we were able to do so. We need to have the next round of champions who are going to partner with us now that we're able to address through policy. And I think our policies have to reflect where there's a need. In fact, one of my bills that I carried was to support Black women entrepreneurs so that they can be able to access funds, access to capital, so that they can be able to thrive. Specifically, some of the African American of slavery descent who have been left out. We have to be more targeted and more specific in how we deliver it. Sometimes our systems, they will keep on using the equal cause when you point to a problem and say, we can't do this because by law, we can do it. And I think we should challenge that notion that the law is a prohibitor. It's not. It has been enabling a lot of divisions, and somehow we have to fix that.
Representative Mahmoud Noor, thank you so much. Good to see you, my friend. Great job, great interview. And I want you to come back as often as you wish. We value the work, the analysis, and we want to make sure that our community has access to what you're doing.
Absolutely. Anytime, brother. I appreciate it. And it's nice to meet both of you and to be with you all. Thank you so much.
Take care. I'm Al McFarlane. We'll see you tomorrow. Take care. Bye-bye. Thank you, Bosh.
Thank you.
Bye, good meeting you.
Good meeting you too. I hope to work with you soon.
All right.
Trying to exit.